in regards to pollinators, what do you think of when you hear the word pollinator?
Bees.
Bees. Right. What else? Hummingbirds?
Monarch butterflies.
Butterflies? Okay. I'll be honest. When I started hearing all this buzz about pollinators, back in 2005, USDA was really starting to promote management practices that are great for pollinators. I thought, it's another kick, some sort of fad, some sort of thing. It's just another initiative. And honestly, it's a lot more important than I first thought it would be. I'm used to working with landowners that are interested in managing their property for white-tailed deer, bobwhite quail, wild turkey, waterfowl. But in regards to pollinators, you find good pollinator habitat where you have good habitat for game species, non-game species, etc., etc. And in the little USDA fold-out information card you're getting there, you'll see some really good facts about pollinators there. One of them being 1 out of every 3 bites of food is due to a pollinator. I don't know if any of you have ever seen pictures or examples of what the produce section of the grocery store would look like if you didn't have pollinators to pollinate crops. Now, most of the agricultural land in this area really doesn't require a pollinator like a butterfly or a moth or a bee or anything like that to pollinate most of our corn, soybeans, and wheat in the watershed here or in this area. But there's a lot of truck crops and there's produce and things like that in other areas where it's very, very important. So I'm going to go through here and just outline, or basically go through this whole thing. This Pollinator Habitat Initiative basically started about a year ago, and it's basically just a grouping of organizations and entities, government, non-government, etc., citizens, whatever, that really the whole goal is to increase awareness about pollinator habitat, help people improve pollinator habitat. So nectar sources and their dependent species are in decline. Monarch Butterfly is a good example. And the key thing is having spring, summer, and fall blooms. The host plant for Monarch Butterfly, does anybody know what the host plant for Monarch Butterfly is? No. What's that? Milkweed. Very good. There's several species of milkweed, common milkweed being the most common. We'll get into a little more detail. But native bees are in decline. Anybody hear of the colony collapse issues? The issues, or aware of the issues that are with honeybees? Some major issues. If you talk to an apiarist or a beekeeper about how's it going, you producing a lot of honey? Are you splitting hives? Are your hives doing well? Most beekeepers have grim news to tell you when you ask questions like that. And there's a lot of factors there with honeybees, but one of the most important things is providing pollinators with food source, with the habitat they need. So again, the purpose of the initiative is to improve pollinator habitat across the state. And so this past year, and a little further than this past year, the Monarch Butterfly petition to be listed. What that basically means is potentially being listed means be considered a federally endangered species. It is not at this point in time, but all these scientists are watching the monarch populations, etc., etc. The White House had a strategy, a directive for pollinator habitat. Last year, the Fish and Wildlife Service is updated. There's a lot of scientists and stuff researching things, updated the map. And the new highway bill that was passed calls for State Department of Transportations to introduce some new strategies to help with pollinators. So monarchs basically, need that nectar from July through September. They need that host plant, the milkweed species, and undisturbed. That's one of the key things. A lot of people are very happy to mow. And if you want to have good pollinator habitat, good habitat for monarch butterflies, you need to leave some areas undisturbed. You need to let that go. And honestly, it's when it comes down to habitat, you know, if there's idle areas, if you know, if you're mowing 3 to 5 acres, or if you're just mowing to mow, that's not real good for pollinators. Connectivity is very important. So the more pollinator habitat you have scattered out, there's more connectivity. So as monarch butterflies and other pollinators migrate, they have stopping stations basically. So very similar to what the examples we use for waterfowl and such. So here's a monarch butterfly life cycle. Basically start off with an egg, and you get it to the caterpillar, pupates, turns into an adult. So get a little closer look here. Anybody ever turned over milkweed leaves and looked for these little boogers on there? The eggs, caterpillars. It's pretty interesting to see. But they basically, the monarchs have 5 instars. At each larval molt, they become, you know, the next instar up. And just some pictures here showing how this process works. Once it pupates, the monarch starts to form in there and starts to emerge, and you end up with a fully grown monarch. 1 month is all the longer it takes for that whole process. So a lot of folks don't realize this, but as monarchs start to migrate up from Mexico, they start their reproduction in the Texas area, the southern states. By the time they get to Ohio, the ones that are reproducing here are the 4th generation of monarchs. They basically keep producing and coming up. And the most critical generation is that 4th generation, because they got to make the trip all the way back to Mexico to overwinter and then start the whole process again. So here's a map showing the most critical areas where we need the habitat for monarch butterflies. The red areas being it really has a lot to do with the migration pattern. So there's a lot of efforts nationwide, statewide, to help improve pollinator habitat in these areas. This is kind of a neat example showing time period. You might not be able to read all that. It's kind of hard to read. But basically those dots, as they're progressing up north, you know, in the northern part of the country here, is just showing the monarch migration northward. And likewise, once they start to move down. So nobody really wants to see the monarch butterfly listed. This monarch butterfly is pretty symbolic. Almost everybody can go out and identify a monarch butterfly. So how many people here can name another butterfly besides the monarch? I heard somebody here, but you know, maybe one person out of the room, like, would you say tiger swallowtail, is that what you said?
Just swallow.
Oh, swallowtail, okay. Yeah, there's several other species of butterflies, but, you know, monarch butterfly, almost everybody knows. Most school kids know because they'll use that, you know, the metamorphosis example in science class, and everybody resonates with monarch butterfly. But, you know, these are indicators. The honeybees are indicators, the problems we're having. So you really need a landscape level effort to really make some change. Create protected habitat to prevent the listing. If everyone does all they can where they can in regards to creating and maintaining pollinator habitat, we shouldn't have any issues. This pollinator habitat is beneficial to a lot of other species. And in all honesty, that's the reason why I care for the monarch butterfly and pollinators, but like I said, we work with the Division of Wildlife. We work on special projects. We've got a special project going on in Highland County for Bobwhite Quail. This pollinator habitat is some of the best habitat for Bobwhite Quail because down low, there's a lot of open ground underneath all these broadleaf plants. Quail's about the size of a softball. Baby quail's about the size of a golf ball. If you got, how many have walked through a stand of prairie grass before? Or thick grass. Think about a critter that big, it can't get through that very well. It has a really hard time getting through it. And then all these broadleaf plants attract insects. That's what that's what turkey, quail, pheasants feed on almost exclusively, about 85% of their diet throughout the summer. High in protein. grow feathers and such. So there's a lot of other benefits to other wildlife species. So this whole pollinator habitat initiative, we're about 1.5 years old. We've got projects with the Department of Transportation going on, American Electric Power, some of their utility easements, their right-of-ways and such. USDA, NRCS, like I said, has been on board with this for quite some time now. We got a state network of partners. We've got a pilot seed program for milkweed seed. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And their Monarch joint venture partners. I don't expect you to read all this, but the point of this slide is there's a couple of different major efforts nationwide. The honeybee strategy, Monarch butterflies, and pollinator habitat acreage. So, there's some pretty big goals. I mean, just for pollinator habitat acreage, for example, 7 million acres of land for pollinators over the next 5 years through federal actions and public-private partnerships. The federal highway bill. I've been hearing on the radio for years now, this highway bill just kept getting kicked down the road. Everybody just kicking the can down, not passing legislation on improving infrastructure. Well, finally it passed, and part of it, just a tiny little part of it, is there's language in the highway bill for state Department of Transportation to use some of the wider sections of right-of-way to either delay mowing or to basically convert it to better pollinator habitat. Talk more about that here locally in a minute. Okay, so federal highway bill. What this map shows you is there are some counties in the state where the Department of Transportation, partners like Pheasants Forever, us, Division of Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, are working together to take some areas of overwide sections of right-of-way, these infield areas at the interchanges and such, to, instead of just mowing it all the time, take the interior portions and convert it to better pollinator habitat. Those are some of the counties. The orange counties are counties that projects are in place, and the yellow counties, or the lighter colored counties there, are planned projects. Here's one here local. That's over by Wapak. That's at Moulton, U.S. Route 30. Excuse me, that's 33A is what that is, and State Route, U.S. Route 33. Those areas there, you're going to see, eventually going to see signs like this. The sign is to let people know what's going on, but these areas, some of these areas, one of them will be planted here in a couple weeks. You may notice some of the grass being brown, sprayed and stuff, but it's going to take some time for this to happen, but the whole point there is to produce better pollinator habitat. Something I probably should have said earlier, when we talk about pollinator habitat, I keep saying this, let me give you a description. Pretty much we're going with native species. Native species are best. They're better suited for the habitat. They're once what growed here. Native grasses, for example, I typically like to use the shorter grasses, little blue stem, Cytotsgrama. They'll get about waist high instead of this high. But about 25% of the mix that's seeded are native grasses. And the rest of the mix are a lot of native wildflowers, like black-eyed Susan, partridge pea, purple coneflower, gray-headed coneflower. The list goes on. It's well documented. I can't provide you all the details, but actual native plants actually are a better supply of nectar and pollen for pollinators than a lot of the introduced ornamental type flowers. So these are all reasons why to go with native, and they can withstand harsh conditions. Areas along roadsides, for example, you get salt, you get a lot of abuse along the highway. So those are the reasons to go with native species. Transmission line projects with AEP, those projects are going on or starting to take place. Those are some of the areas. USDA Efforts, the Farm Service Agency, has been, along with Natural Resources Conservation Service, has been providing funding for landowners to improve or create habitat on their property through the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. But here's a big one. There's a practice through the Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, It's called CP42, just a code for pollinator habitat. The good thing is USDA provides incentives and cost share and rental payments to do that. And those are on cropland acres. So if you want to take out a marginal area or a corner of the field and plant pollinator habitat, you can do that. You're going to get money for it. There's a SAVE proposal, more program stuff here basically, and there's basically work that we do to help improve land that's already in CRP. So and then we also got this Milkweed Project going on. We're trying to collect pods throughout the state. It's kind of funny, I've seen this pollinator stuff come on. I told my supervisor about a year and a half ago, I said, hey, if you want to get into some money, start producing milkweed seed. And he looked at me real funny, like, what are you talking about? I go, here within the next couple of years, there's going to be such a demand for milkweed seed. You're not going to be able to find it. Either that or you're going to pay an arm and a leg for it. And pretty much that's happening right now. So just through grassroots efforts, basically working with, citizens, landowners, and soil and water conservation districts across the state here, they're actually collecting seed pods. And those seed pods are being collected at soil and water conservation districts. Here's some of our staff that collected a truckload of milkweed seed pods. And those milkweed seed pods are being transported to penal institutions, to the prisons. Prisoners are extracting the seed, and the tedious job is stripping the seed from the silk in there. It's a very tedious job, but hey, the folks that run the penitentiaries and stuff, they look for work for the prisoners to do, and we get it done for free. So, and then the plan is to distribute the seed. I was supposed to bring some swamp milkweed seed here today for Tom, but I left it in my refrigerator, so I'll get that to him. But the cool thing about this is for the folks that get soil and water conservation districts or anybody that acts as a collection point, they get free seed that comes back to them, and they can distribute to landowners. So it's all hands on deck, urban, suburban, rural areas. You can create pollinator habitat about anywhere. And here's some examples. Some blocks of CRP across the landscape may look like this, and keep in mind here, we're right next to an urban area there, if you can see that on the aerial photo. Highway projects, some more projects, small projects even in town. Maybe, even backyard type projects or areas. Airports are starting to do this. I got a good friend of mine and a contractor that's doing over somewhere between 300 and 500 acres at Dayton International Airport. Also taking place in Wright Pat too. So the landscape could look like this with pollinator, and that's really what we need, just a bunch of small little areas to help really make an impact. We're looking for partners to do this. Anybody can be a partner of the initiative. The LIA can, if you wish. But ultimately what it boils down to is people at the grassroots level like yourself that either want to spread the message, but more importantly, help other people or help yourselves and improve pollinator habitat. So here's an example of some grassroots efforts. This is the billboard sign that's going to be going up. There's going to be 4 of these, 2 of these and actually 2 other different types, but the same message going up in Darke County. Darke County Pheasants Forever had an incentive program last year and still do. They'll provide $300 per acre incentive payment on top of what CRP pays for that CP42, that pollinator habitat. Well, they got about 5 or 6 acres last year, 2 landowners. Wasn't real successful. So they're taking the money, or more money I should say, they're putting it into a public relations campaign. They're basically advertising it. So they're putting up billboards before these up throughout the summer. They're going to be putting out news releases, PSAs, all kinds of information, stuff like that. And that's just an example of how you guys or PF up here or anybody can partner to help do that. And what do? You funnel them to the Soil and Water Conservation District to provide the assistance. So what I've done is I put together information like you have here and then some in folders so they could give those to people as they come in, and then they can supply them with the information they need. That's basically it. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
We know a beekeeper that used to supply us honey, but he no longer does. And we asked him what's going on with the bees and stuff. And he says, well, he believes it's the herbicides, like that farmers are applying on their fields, and that are more so now, evidently, than in the past, that are causing the bees to not do well. Is that affecting monarchs too, maybe? Herbicides?
Yeah, it is, but let's look at it from this perspective. We as a society, as we go, we become more efficient, don't we? And I remember hearing back when I was in high school that we'd be producing double the amount of grain per acre in 20, 30 years or something like that. I'm thinking, how in the world is that going to happen? But with technology, that's what happens. So in the mid-90s, what happened? The Roundup Ready crops came on the scene. Prior to that, I remember being 6, 8, a little kid, and one of my main jobs in my grandparents' house in the evening was to pull milkweed, pull weeds in the bean field, whatever the cultivators did not get. And a lot of it was milkweed, because milkweed was a very hard weed. Most farmers have a bad taste in their mouth about milkweed. But do you see milkweed problems in fields today? You don't, because technology's advanced to where it isn't a problem, as are many other weeds. So getting back to your question, it's all about the habitat. Yes, herbicides do have an effect, but we're not going to change that with modern agriculture. We're not going to go back to where we start allowing milkweed and other weeds to grow in our fields. That's just not going to happen. It's not efficient, it's not effective. However, marginal areas around the edges of the field, that's why this CP42, CP33, these conservation USDA efforts to encourage landowners to introduce pollinator plants back along the edges of fields, so you still have the habitat for them, but we still need to produce food and feed the world. So it's a matter of adapting and changing. And the most harmful pesticides are the neonicotinoids, basically pesticides that will kill bug larvae. Those are the most harmful to honeybees and other pollinators because it has a direct effect on them. But you usually depends on what's being cropped as to whether those are being applied or not.
Those are the seed coatings primarily, right?
What's that?
What you just named is primarily seed coatings, isn't it?
The seed coating, I don't know enough about seed coating to know, but yes, I think that has an effect too. And almost all the seed is planted, agricultural seeds treated. Yes?
Can you back up one slide and give that phone number?
Sure. That's at Dark Soil and Water Conservation District. They're going to be fielding the questions and the people that come in as a result of inquiring about pollinator habitat. I do need to, is everybody okay if I advance to the next slide? Right there is the information about this pollinator habitat initiative, so please take that down to the website. But the Facebook page is very informative, very good. And that's about it. Any other questions? Yes?
Would you just restate, what's the extra kicker on farmers leaving land fallow? You said there's an extra payment available. I didn't quite understand.
Okay, I think what you're referring to or asking about is through the Conservation Reserve Program, which is a program available through U.S. Department of Agriculture, right here at our local, conservation office. If you have tillable land that has cropping history, it's eligible for this pollinator habitat practice. And you can plant it 20 feet wide along the edge of a field if you want. I think there's just a ½ an acre minimum. You have to do at least a ½ an acre. You can do a whole field if you want, but it's just the minimum of ½ an acre. But what it does, it pays the landowner for taking that cropland out of production. It pays you money to plant it, because you have cost in doing that. But then you also have the acreage that's taken out of production. get reimbursement for that. You basically get like a cash rent payment based upon the soil type. And what Darke County was doing, their Pheasants Forever chapter, is they were providing a $300 per acre one-time incentive payment, a one-time payment to promote the practice, to get more people to do it, is what they're trying to do. I think they're still offering that. One last thing I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention earlier on, is I really applaud the efforts that your organization, the Lake Restoration Commission, and others put forth in regards to the wetland restoration work around the lake. And the surrounding upland habitat is good pollinator habitat from what I've seen too. And that's really well worth it. Good work. Okay. Thank you very much.